Quick, what do you think of when you think of London?
Welcome to Plain English, the podcast that goes at the right speed for English language learners. Listen now and read the transcript online at plainenglish.com. Now, here's Jeff, your host for today's episode.
So what is it? What's the symbol of London in your mind? You might have said Big Ben, the famous clock tower. Maybe you might have said the double-decker bus. If you're a little younger, maybe the London Eye is your symbol of the city. But I bet some of you probably thought about the elegant red phone booths that used to be all over the city. Those phone booths are becoming a thing of the past as the telephone companies are replacing them with kiosks covered in digital advertising. Yuck. And as you might imagine, not everyone is happy about it. Welcome to episode 92 of Plain English, the best podcast for learning English. Well, that's my opinion anyway. Here's what we do here. We talk about one topic in the news, and then afterward, we go over an English expression or phrasal verb that came up in the main part of the program. Today's expression is a good one. To put it mildly. This is tough, but I know you'll get it. Anyway, each Monday and Thursday, we do one topic in the news, followed by a phrasal verb or an English expression. And by listening to a wide variety of topics, you'll get used to hearing English vocabulary in many different contexts and settings. So if you have not yet clicked subscribe in your Apple Podcasts app or follow in Spotify, do so now so that you always have the latest episodes. Today, like I said, is episode 92. And that means you can find our transcripts online at plainenglish.com/92. When's the last time you placed a call from a telephone booth? I bet more than a few of you never have. You've never had the pleasure of walking on the street, going into a little booth, feeding coins into a solid metal box, and dialing a number, then straining to understand the person on the other end of the line. I can't remember the last time I used a phone booth. It's not the kind of occasion you would typically remember, but it would probably have been before I got my first cell phone in 2003. And look, for good reason, the world has moved on from that technology. But across many parts of the world, the infrastructure, the actual phone booths, and the connections that made the phone work, that's all still there. So what to do with it? Rip them out? Leave them there? Adapt them to the present day? Phone booths are at the center of a battle across England, especially in London, and especially in the historic center of Westminster. It's a particularly sensitive subject here because the phone booths in London are so symbolic. They are sturdy, bright red, with curved tops and paned glass. I asked you to think about the symbols of London at the beginning of this episode, and the London phone booth is definitely one of the most popular. but no more. Gone are many of the classic telephone booths, replaced with something for the modern age. So what does the phone booth for the modern age look like? Well, if you guessed that it's covered in digital advertising, you would be correct. The new phone booths are slim and they have digital screens flashing ads on two sides. They have a touch screen for maps and have internet connectivity. But the critics say they are an eyesore. They are just ugly electronic billboards where there was once the stately, well-designed classic London phone booth. A pessimist might say that the phone companies are installing internet access and maps just to give them an excuse to post advertising. Since very few people need internet access or maps on the streets these days, what with the proliferation of smartphones. One government official in Westminster called them a blot on the landscape and said the phone handsets are just an excuse to post big billboards. On just one block, there are 6 so-called phone booths. One of the designs is actually an import from New York City, where you can charge your phone, connect to the internet, and do a couple of basic things on the streets of Manhattan. From my time living in New York, I don't remember seeing a whole lot of people using them. Those who did tended to linger around them all day, which was not the intended use of these kiosks. So if cities hate the idea, why not just tell the phone companies to take them down or change them? The tricky part is that the phone companies have special legal protections dating back to a time when copper wire phone service really was a vital public service. The traditional legacy phone companies have the right to put their own services in the public way. So the phone companies got smart, if smart is the right word, and started putting these so-called kiosks every 100 feet on crowded streets purely for the advertising. That is, to put it mildly, not in the spirit of the original law. The phone companies, of course, have a different opinion. They say they are providing business people and tourists with the information they need as they move around the bustling center of the city. They say that these are more useful than the old traditional phone booths. Critics say they'd rather have a tree instead of an electronic billboard. The British government is now looking into a way to change the law that heavily favors the telephone company. I would say the time is right for a modern company to rethink what people in the 21st century really need on the street of a major city. So many of us have smartphones, but not everyone has international phone service. Some people will lose their phone and might need to contact friends or relatives in an emergency. Maybe you just need a charge from time to time. So I bet the time is right for a company to sit down, survey users, and think about what exactly can be of use for the modern day. If you are in London and you're bothered by the eyesore that is these new kiosks, take heart. It could be worse. You could be in Paris, where they're installing urinals all over the sidewalks. I thought about that for an episode until I realized I didn't want to spend 2 hours reading, writing, and talking about that particular topic. I have some big thank yous this week, and they are to the 5 people who left reviews for Plain English on Apple Podcasts in the last month or so. Unfortunately, the system doesn't capture people's full names unless you voluntarily put your name in the review, so I can't say thanks by name to everyone, but I did want to say thank you to Patrick from France. Sorry, I just made a joke about your capital city. Eduardo from Chile, Rasnava from Peru, and one more listener from France and another from Bogota, Colombia, all of whom left great reviews for Plain English in the last month or two. All right, so last week we had 2 simple words that were easy to use. Upside and downside, remember? Today, we have an expression that is actually pretty hard to use, but I bet you can do it with some practice. The expression is to put it mildly. So mild is a word to mean kind of light, not strong. Mild weather is warm, but not too warm, really comfortable. Mild salsa is not spicy. Actually, I like that. Think about a hot, spicy salsa and a mild salsa. And now, think about a very strong opinion you have about something. Like an opinion that, if it were a salsa, would be a really hot habanero salsa. Maybe you hate the billboards on the streets of London. You think they're ugly and too commercialized. You think the phone company is abusing the system and taking advantage of the public. You think they're lying when they say they're providing a good service to the public. They're just in it for the money. Okay, that's like a very strong, hot habanero salsa opinion. Now we want to take this opinion down and we want to make it a refreshing, mild tomato salsa. Not quite as strong. You're going to say your opinion, but you're going to put it mildly. And, this is important, you're going to say you're putting it mildly as a signal to the other person that your opinion is actually a little stronger. I love doing this. It's a way to express an opinion in an inoffensive way and just like wink at the other person and imply that your true opinion might actually be a little stronger than the words you just said. So think back to how you heard it the first time. When I was ready to give my opinion about the phone booths in London, I said that the new design with digital advertising all over it was not in the spirit of the original law that gave phone companies the right to put phone booths on the street. I said it was not in the spirit of the law, meaning that maybe this isn't exactly what the law was intended to do. That's a pretty mild opinion. But then when I said, to put it mildly, I'm signaling to you that my opinion is probably a little stronger than what I actually said. So think about that and listen again. The phone companies started putting kiosks every 100 feet in London to take advantage of the advertising opportunity. That is, to put it mildly, not in the spirit of the original law that protects phone companies. Did you notice that? I'm kind of winking to you, signaling to you that I actually have a stronger opinion than what I said. This is tough, so let me give you a few more examples. When I was in Mexico, I found myself in the Zocalo metro station at rush hour, and the trains were really crowded, with people pushing their way off and onto the cars. That was, to put it mildly, an uncomfortable experience. What am I telling you here when I say to put it mildly? I'm telling you that it was actually more than just an uncomfortable experience. Maybe it was unsettling. Maybe it was unsafe. Who knows? I'm not saying in that sentence. But by saying to put it mildly, I'm signaling to you that my true opinion is stronger than the actual words I'm saying. Here's one more. There are only 6 months left until Great Britain officially exits the European Union. The two sides have not yet come to an agreement, and Britain appears unprepared for what's to come. And that's putting it mildly. This is another example where I'm telling you, I could have used some stronger language here, but I put it mildly instead. I'm leaving it to your imagination to think what I might have said had I not purposely used mild language there. Okay, that was a hard one. I felt a little bad at the end of the last episode, since upside and downside are maybe not the hardest things to understand, to put it mildly, but I hope I made up for it today. Before we go, I have some news for those of you who live in Mexico. You might remember back in episode 47 at plainenglish.com/47, we talked about electric scooters that are all over San Francisco and some other cities in the United States. Well, last Sunday morning, as I was sitting at a cafe on what would be the east side of Parque Mexico, near where I was staying, I was enjoying a nice latte and some huevos bañados, and right in front of me, right in front of my face on the sidewalk, were 4 green electric scooters. And I remember thinking, well, that didn't take long. So if you haven't heard that episode yet, and it's all about these electric scooters that don't need to be returned to any location and they're just rented by the hour, well, now they are in Mexico, if you can believe it. Go back and listen if you haven't heard that episode, plainenglish.com/47. JR, the producer, and I will be back on Thursday with yet another episode. If you like listening to English and you're confident in your abilities, you might consider trying an audiobook. And if you want to try one for free, you can get a free audiobook with a trial subscription to Audible. If you want to get that free audiobook, just go to plainenglish.com/book, BOOK, and you'll be taken to a website that has all the details. That's it for today. See you back here on Thursday.